It's about to go down with Marc and Cathey, a live coaching show about dropping ideas. Marc and Cathey coach and have conversations with brilliant idea creators who are reimagining the world through the expression of their words, thoughts, and action.
Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Marc Williams.
And I'm Cathey Armillas. Welcome to It Is About to Go Down. And it is. It's going to go down because we have Brian Robinson with us. Brian is a friend of both Marc and I. I think we've known him both for over a decade. And Brian is an amazing, awesome speaker. We kind of all share that. In fact, we'll probably be chatting a little bit about how all three of us were working on a world champion speech. But Brian Robinson is also the author of a book called How to Meet Women on the Subway. Yes, you heard that right. How to Meet Women on the Subway. Welcome to, oh, there it is.
You
it's a
see
little
it?
blurry, but we can see it. Welcome to our, oh, there it is. There it is. There it is. Welcome to our show, Brian. Tell us about that. Tell us about how that came about.
Oh man, it's really funny. So first of all, thank you for allowing me to be here. I'm really grateful. So, you know, every year they have the International Speech Contest. Well, this was actually for the Humorous Speech Contest. And I came up with, I didn't know what to talk about. And so somebody said, well, you should talk about something you know. And at the time I was single. And this guy said, Brian, you have this uncanny ability of always meeting women on the subway. And I thought that would be hilarious if I talked about it. So I put together my speech and I had like this whole three-prong approach where I pretend I'm lost. I ask for directions. And usually in New York, if they're from another part of the country or world, I would say, oh, you have an accent. Where are you from? I'm from Zimbabwe. Oh, I've always wanted to go to Zimbabwe. And then I would get the phone number. And so that was kind of the speech. But over the speech contest, I won area. I won the club, the area, the division, and the district, which was a really big deal. So that was really fun. And it was quite hilarious at the time. And then I moved down to Miami for a year, and one of my colleagues said, you know, you should write a book about that. And I said, oh, no. And she said, oh, no, it'd be really funny. So I was in Miami for a year, and I moved back to New York, and I started kicking around the idea, and I came up with all these ideas. I could do a chapter on how to develop your subway swagger. What was the other ones I had? The three-prong approach. How to meet the subway moms. I had another one. How you could use your unlimited. I had one called Unlimited Women, Unlimited Metro Card. And I did this whole YouTube video too. So, and I did this chapter on how you could use your card, get a loaded weapon every time you'd meet a woman by the subway turnstile, and she's trying to find her Metro card. You say, oh, ma'am, allow me to give you a swipe. And then you give her your business card and say, I'd love to take you out sometime. And if you do 20 a day, 5 days a week, that's 100 cards passed out. And if 15% reach out to you, that's a 15% return.
Oh my God, I'm dying right now. I'm just dying.
So we, you know, and in the book, we have pictures of me carrying baby strollers up the subway stairs. And I said, the divorce rate's 50%. There's a good shot that she could be single. Oh, and I had a whole chapter about where to meet the tourist. And then the other part was about a subway. Oh, there was called the hot zones. And this thing was, if you liked a particular type of woman. So here was an example. If you liked Dominican women, then what you would do is you go to the Dominican Republic for a couple of weeks, you travel around, then you come back, then you go to a specific area in New York City where there's lots of Dominicans. In this case, it's Washington Heights, it's Inwood, and you go to the subway station, you start meeting women there. Oh, I was just in the Dominican Republic. And you use your Metro card, but it was called the hot zones. So I put together this whole crazy book, and then it was just for giggles. And we got together and we had a book launch party. And my background's media sales. So I reached out to all the New York City media, and lo and behold, Fox News showed up. And then they covered it on the nightly news. And I thought, wow, that's so cool. That's so great. And 2 days later, and they did this whole thing like, can you meet women on the subway? And well, here's this guy who meets people on the subway. 2 days later, the New York Post called me. And, you know, the New York Post is a little salty in some of the things that they write about. And they did a page 3 interview. And the guy basically interviewed me and said, this guy, the headline was "The Man Who Dated Over 500 Women from the Subway." And that was kind of the whole thing. But he also went down on the subway with me and he watched me in action. And they had a cameraman follow me around. And I went for like 6 for 6 getting phone numbers. And they watched my technique and he wrote about it and all that stuff. And the short version is, this is hilarious, was that once the New York Post article came out, press started calling me from everywhere. Men's Health, Cosmopolitan, the BBC worldwide. I did a radio interview. They said, oh, it's in Africa and Europe, Ireland. And then in Ireland, the BBC Irish locale, they basically said that I was the Ted Bundy of the subway, because they said, one of the women said, oh, he's got to be creepy. Now it turned for the worse, because I was barely selling any books. It was on Amazon and I know who was reading it. Then we had, Hawker said the creepiest man in New York City. And then there was another, the subway molester. That was another one.
Oh.
And then to top it all off, 2 weeks later, the Columbia Journalism Review wrote an article about me, about what a bad rap I got, about how the book was, I don't know how they found out about this stuff. So anyway, needless to say, I got worldwide publicity. I only sold about 300 or 400 books though, but I had a great time.
You know, it's really funny, Mark, you know, for our listeners, when Brian, you're describing the, you know, speaking at the club and stuff, that's in Toastmasters. All 3 of us connected and met at some point or another in Toastmasters. And so it's so funny that started from a Toastmaster speech. I didn't actually know that.
Yeah, you know, it's also a classic example of, you don't know what can happen by just running with an idea. And you know, at the Miami Herald, that's where I was working, and the woman said, oh, you should write the book. I said, no, not really. And then I got to New York and I had all these thoughts, and I'm pretty creative, and it just all came to me. And I said, I've got to at least give it a shot. And I also, there's a woman, what's Tamara Houston? She's a pretty big Hollywood manager. She's worked with Idris Elba, and she managed Star Jones, even Eve at one time. And we had worked together on something years ago, and I signed a contract for her to go pitch some of the different studios. And she went out, I think, to Will Smith and a few other people too, to do a script behind it. Now, nothing happened behind it, but to think about something from a club level speech and actually really just keep running with it, it's really amazing how it really took off.
Yeah.
You're like the Beastie Boy. For those who don't know the reference, my understanding is that License to Ill, the very classic album from the Beastie Boys, was originally written as a parody to hip hop music.
Oh, wow.
They were not being serious at all. And yet people took it seriously. It's a classic hip hop album. And then their careers just blew up from there. Now, they didn't get all the bad press that you got.
Well, maybe they did.
Or maybe they did. But I got to tell you what really stood out to me, and Cathey, I don't know if you wrote this down, but I love this line. You don't know what
will happen with an idea. I wrote it down too.
Yeah.
I know. I just wanted to show you that I was with you. I knew it. I just wanted to say, yes, I wrote it down too. It's the last thing that I wrote. And I love that.
I think at the club level, the original title was called A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing or something like that. And then we began to work on it. And someone said, no, we should do the title, How to Meet Women on the Subway. And then I began sharing it some more, and I came up with these, we just kept fleshing it out. One of the lines in the speech, for example, was, hey, look, this stuff works. I've only been tasered twice and maced once. But this stuff works. That was the line. I've only been tasered twice and maced once. But this stuff works. And then I hired somebody, a film student at one of the local schools, and I paid her $500. She made 5 different videos for me. They're up on YouTube. It is classic. I'm on the subway, and the funniest one is the unlimited Metro card, because I'm flirting with this girl, and I said, "Oh, allow me. Let me get the swipe for you." And I did the swipe, and she starts doing her hair. And it wasn't until I saw the video, she was really responding. And I said, you know what? I would love to take you to a book signing. It's going to happen next week. Here's my business card. Will you call me? Oh yeah, I'll call you. And it was so funny. Then I went back and I said, you know, if you do this 20 times a day, 5 days a week, that's 100 cards passed out. If you get a 20% return, that's 20 women calling you. Anyway, the video is classic. But again, it's all starting out with something small and just keep working and flushing on it. So anyway, I'm kind of going off.
Well, I'm just curious. The woman who told you this should be a book.
Yeah.
And I don't know if she explained this to you or not, so I'm just curious. What was it about this idea that you think made her say, this has got to be a book? Like, you got to take this further than just, you know, an idea for some contest in a Toastmasters.
Yeah. Well, at the district contest, they filmed it, the video, and it was a lights out speech. And I think it was up on YouTube. And I was so excited. I was showing everybody. It's not really PC correct now. I got in trouble about that years ago one time. But she saw the video, and I think that is kind of what got her attention to say, you should try to write a book about it.
Because it went viral?
Well, no, I think she saw the video, and in her mind, she just thought that would be kind of funny. And I guess because I think that was enough. Seeing the video, and in her mind, you could do a book. And I never thought about that.
Well, you know, it's funny, I guess, whether it's parody or not, whether some people take it serious, and I can, like you said, Brian, you made some reference to, like, I know who the 300 people were that were buying the book, right?
Yeah.
Other people are watching and kind of taking part in your parody, and they're laughing, and it's very funny, and, you know, look, it works. I've only got tased once, maced twice. And for whether it's parody or not, I think the potential for doing something, taking an idea and bringing it to life is always there, which is, I think, what you're saying, which is amazing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You know, and then the book cover, my friend Bernard knew this guy named Eric Wong. He was amazing photographer. So we kept it real simple. We have these crazy photographs of me sitting next to the woman, and I got these funny expressions and stuff like that. And the book turned out great. So it's funny because I just thought about this tonight out in front of the building. I used to go on the subway, and I would hawk it on the subway, and I went to B&H, and I had one of those things around my mouth, you know, like with a little speaker.
Yeah.
And the thing comes down here. And I was like pitching it on the subway and on the street. And I was walking down the stairs, and I saw some people from my building. They were having some meeting about something. And I had this flashback of when the book came out. I did color copies, put them up in the elevators of our building, and we're part of a complex of about 5 different buildings. And I didn't think anything about it. And I said, we're having a book launch party in front of I'm going to do a autograph signing party. Well, lo and behold, 2 days later, before the book signing, somebody says, you're the guy that's all over Facebook. I said, what do you mean? There was a building Facebook page where 170 people went online and were debating about the obnoxious, crazy guy who were threatening women. In there. And I didn't even know we had a Facebook page. And now there's like 2,000 members. I think at the time it was 1,000. And people were like, I know that guy. He's a nice guy. Oh no, he's trying to pick up women in the building. And then my wife went online in my honor. He's a deacon at the church. We serve every week. He's been married for 4 years. He's a good man. He'll stop the elevator and hold it for people and all that stuff. But I think
that's right. You were married when you released
the book came out. Yeah.
Yeah.
We were just dating when I did the speech. But again, you know, that I think that what was funny was you saw the response by just seeing the book. I don't know how to get it there.
Yeah.
All I did, this was it. me talking to a woman, how to meet women on the subway. Simple. And people are like, oh, that's hilarious. That idea generated all these comments on Facebook and everything else too. So
this is what I'm trying to figure out. And especially for everybody who's watching. And both of you, media, marketing, explain, what is it about that? Like, some people are trying to come up with ideas all the time. People want to write books. People want to write movie scripts. People want to come up with all kinds of things. What is it about, I don't know, the title? What is it that took it from just a silly idea to like this phenomenon?
You know what it was? It's actually executing it, actually doing it and throwing it out there. That's all I did. Okay, look, I'm a marketing guy. I'm pretty creative. Let's do a book cover. Let's make it real simple. I'll come up with some crazy chapters. But the title itself spoke to New Yorkers. So it was relevant to the audience. It was relevant to media, that it would generate some publicity. And the other thing, really, at the end of the day, I took an idea to give the speech, and then I took the next step by actually writing a book about it. And most of us will stop on the second or third step. I mean, that's where the thing is for people flushing out. And I've seen this so many, and I'm in sales. I know how many times I may have given up the fourth, the fifth, or the sixth time, but it might be the seventh time that the idea will catch on. And I think that's all I did different than anybody else.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of like, all three of us share in a friend that's also a speaker. And he said when he was doing comedy back in the day that he asked his comedy mentor, like, he'd see like newbies come onto the stage and open mic and they would do better than him. And he's like, oh, I've been working so hard. I don't understand. And he goes, he asked his mentor, like, how do you know who's going to make it? And his mentor said, that's easy. Whoever keeps going. And it kind of speaks a little bit to what you're saying, Brian, is that it's like,
yeah,
it's easy to come up with the idea. So it's easy to show up at the club and, the comedy club, but whoever keeps going is the one that's going to make it. I mean,
yeah.
Mark, you and I both listened to Kevin Hart's book, and man, he talked about getting a chicken wing thrown at his face and like, to keep going. So yeah, Brian, I love that, and more than half of an idea is executing it.
And one last thing, and I'll try to wrap up, is that I remember when I had the book together, I was so excited. I found this printer that did like 5,000 copies. I don't know. It was a lot of copies. I got a lot in the closet, by the way, too. And I got the book together, and I was working at USA Today. I had a pretty big job, and they laid off half the salespeople. So I'm out of work. I'm on unemployment. I've got to go find a new job. But I had this book launch party that I'd already planned. So I drove around to the New York Post, to the New York Daily News, about the local news, and I went in with envelopes, and I basically cold called and wrote the name of the editor and put the books in there, praying that they would open up the package and read it. And I remember I was so distraught because I'm like, my wife's expecting a baby. I've got to find a new job. What the hell am I doing this? But I've got to go see if I can get some publicity. And lo and behold, Fox News, said, oh, we got this package. They showed up at the event. I didn't even know they were coming. But I remember I could have stopped at that time of not even going out and dropping off the packages at the TV stations.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. How'd you say, Cathey? The key to an idea is executing it. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. Now, Brian, this is all comical. I always tell you, you're a clown. You are the king of ridiculous. I love you. This I absolutely. Yeah. But you've also talked about the flip side of all of this, right? You wrote this book. You came up with this silly idea. But it's interesting now that you're talking about it. Now I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I got to figure things out. And the one thing that I know about you that I would love the world to know is that in the heart of this very clownish, ridiculous man that I love is a guy who's got such a big heart.
Yeah.
I mean, you really do. I say this out loud. I say this to the world. I love you, brother. I love
thank you very much, Mark.
you know, and I know that when I listen to you speak, there are so many powerful things out there. Like, you are well beyond just being a funny guy. And there was another speech that you had told us about that I've heard you deliver that we know that you've been thinking about turning into your next book. And I think that, you know, we would love, Cathey, if I could speak on your behalf, we would love to help you flesh out the idea for that book, because this is, you know, from what you've told us and from what we've heard, we think this could be next level. So tell us a little bit about Face It to Fix It, and what you want to do with this idea so that we can start wrapping our brains around how to put level.
So in 2015, I gave a speech, but I guess I have to go back further. So in 2015, I gave a speech for the international speech contest called Face It to Fix It. And I shared the story about how I was a mess financially for many years, borrowing money, credit cards, and I got my mom into it and got her in trouble. And a friend of mine I went to and said, look, can I borrow money? And he basically said, look, Brian, you got a real problem. I'm in recovery. I think he was a former heroin addict. And he said, you got to face it to fix it. And I talk about in the speech about how in order to fix our problems, we have to be willing to face it. And how I started going to Debtors Anonymous, and I had to go back and make amends to all these people. I had to find a good job and keep it because I was always running through different jobs and all that stuff. And I paid off all my debts. And that speech really seemed to resonate with other people. And, you know, and I thought about the success about the Subway book, and I was sharing with a few people about it. And then my wife has been telling me for years, Brian, just like you said, Mark, Brian, you got to quit the BS, the clowning around stuff, because there's the real serious Brian there, and there's something much deeper. So over the last several years, I've written little pages here and there about, you know, why do men avoid their problems? What are some of the excuses that we make? How sometimes and I think in my voicemail I say that sometimes our life is limited until we're willing to face the problems that we have. And that's something that's really hard. Like, people can bury their crap and they think that nobody knows, but eventually it will show up in relationships, at work, with money, and all kinds of areas. And so this has been something that has been really big. And a little background about me. So I sold advertising in the 90s, and around 2004 or 5, I worked at the Ready, Willing, and Able program. I worked at a homeless shelter for 2 years. And I worked with a lot of guys coming home from prison, and I would help the guys get back to work. That was my job. I was a job developer. And I would hear all kinds of stories from guys who were on drugs or robbing banks or stealing stuff, and how they went away to prison and how they'd get their life back together. But it was all about, okay, we don't give a crap about what happened. What are you going to do about it right now? You want to be a good dad? You got to go back and talk to your kids. You got to make amends with the baby mama. It was just, and so I was teaching this stuff and not really realizing that how much of it really applied to my own life. And then that was something that happened. And also at the men's ministry at my church, for several years, I was like one of the leaders, and I've kind of the last year or two kind of not done as much, but I have a leadership role. And I would constantly talk to men, and it was amazing hearing all the stories from guys. Sometimes they would begin sharing about how you would say, dude, how's everything going? Oh, everything's fine. Everything's great. And then next thing you know, they're sharing about how their wife is ready to kick them out, or they lost their job. And I'm like, but you're putting on this big act like everything's okay. And I think that's what a lot of people do, a lot of men especially. And through all my work through the ministry, I would find out how many men are really suffering because there's something unresolved. You know, one guy, he broke down and said how he left his kids and he never went back and I don't know what he did, but it was an example of going back in the past and fixing these things. But I think through the nonprofit, through the men's ministry, and also through my own life, it's all about, like, I know both of you have some demons in your life, but you had to go do some work to face it so you can get to the next level. And there are literally millions of people out there who think that they can keep going without addressing the bullshit that happened to them in their past lives. And so I'm still trying to flesh out what the solution is, and there's no quick fix, by the way, too. I have a few chapters on, am I talking too much, or do you guys want to ask questions? but the one thing that always comes up, like with the men's ministry, it's like, dude, you've got to be willing to ask for help. You've got to be willing to do that. You've also got to admit that you've got a problem. That's the whole thing with the 12-step program. Your life will be limited. You won't be able to go any further than you can until you're willing to face that crap from the past. My marriage, this is a classic example. Look around, make sure, so without going into too much, we got married. I had a big job. Well, no, we get married. She gets pregnant. I lose the job. And over the next 4 to 5 years, I lost like 4 to 5 jobs. And it was the craziest period of my life. We have the baby. And my wife is like, what the hell's wrong with this guy? And there were some things going on. I couldn't decide what I wanted to do. And I got depressed. And there was all this stuff that went on. But she had some health issues. And I had to step up like never, ever before in my life, where I went back and I got a job at Tribune back in publishing. I was into real estate, but I went back into media sales for 3 years. And then I went back to Newsweek, where I've been for almost 2 years. And I've had a stellar performance there the last 2 years. But during that time, while my wife was going through some challenges and stuff, I had to step up with the money. And I had to do my fair share of things, which I had not been doing. I had to be a better dad and do more at that time. But there were all these things that I was blind to doing the first half of the marriage, that the second half, that I had to become a much better person in order for her to stay with me and for her to make it through the marriage. And it was the hardest thing was I had to face these things, and it was painful because I didn't want to admit that I had done anything wrong in the past. But my story is the same as all of us. We all have those things. So anyway, I'm going on a lot of the stuff.
I would love for us to kind of dissect that, because Brian, on some level, I think all three of us love a good alliteration, and so this "face it to fix it" it's catchy. It sounds cool, and that's step number one of a good idea, right? Is that it kind of makes you lean in and you go, ooh, that sounds catchy. But I would put my TED coach hat on and I'd be like, oh, let's get to the meat of it. Let's get some meat out of this. So I want to ask a couple questions in regards to that, or I'm going to pose a couple questions, and I think maybe we could talk through it. The first thing I was thinking as you were talking, Brian, I wrote down a couple things and I was like, what's the magic in facing it? And then you started kind of talking about it a little bit, which led me to my next thought is like, what do we need to do to face something? And then how would you, like, if I'm thinking about this as an idea, not as the actual question for you to the world or something, it's like, how would you create this book or have this idea for people that might not self-identify with that they have to face something yet, right? And so do you force people in a camp where you're like telling everybody, well, you've got something you have to face, or is it the kind of book, like recovery programs where it's like, we're just sitting here until you're ready to face it?
Yeah.
The answer might lie in what would it take to face something? And maybe there's some prerequisite to find out. Like, I would think you should do that in your book, in your program, to find out, to ask people the question is like, do you need to face it? You might need to face something if this or that,
Yeah. I think sometimes what happens, in 12 steps, they talk about hitting the rock bottom and so forth, but there's the different levels of change. There's awareness. Well, I think it's like there's awareness, or there's pre-contemplation that you need to start thinking about it. There's contemplation, like maybe I should do something. And then there's, I think, preparation. You begin planning where you can do, what you can do, go to meetings, get a therapist, reach out to friends, and then you take action. And then after you've taken the action, then you have to have a program for maintenance. But it's something along those lines. I think it's almost what you're, to answer your question, is that people have to have an awareness that there's something that's going on that's not really working in their life. And that's the thing, is that we all have something, you know, I don't want to say that we're all flawed and you've got to listen to me, but in most cases, it could be something going on in a relationship, professionally. It could be something from our past that's still kind of in that closet we haven't addressed. And I think that is having that is really sharing, look, I'm not going to force this on you, but if you think that there's something there that's still bothering you, here are some things you might be able to do. I think the other thing too that always resonates with me is that your life will never get any further until and this is, some people can say, I'm good the way I am, I don't want to go back. But there's got to come to a point where you say, I want a little bit more. But to get the more, you got to be able to face whatever that thing is.
I hear what you're saying, Brian, and I want to piggyback and go back to a question that Cathey asked, because what's burning in my head is face it to fix it for those who are ready to face it to fix it, or is it for those who haven't gotten to that level yet? Like, I always think about, you know, we throw out the motivational speaker people, right? The Tony Robbins comments and stuff like that. And sometimes you wonder, how in the world are people paying this much money to go see these people, right? And then you realize that the audience that they're bringing in are mostly people who are now ready to hear the message, right?
Yeah.
There's a whole population of people out there who don't think that this is for them. I'm not picking up that to fix a book. That's not me.
Yeah.
And they're the audience that may very well need to pick that book up. So so piggybacking off of and building upon Cathey's question, how do we take this idea and get people who don't believe that this is for them?
You know, it's kind of like, that's a fantastic question. It's kind of like Alcoholics Anonymous, where people, they're not forcing anything. You can come, that's great. We don't know your name. We're not going to call and hound you to say, come back. It's all up to you. But we're here if you need help. And I think maybe what I could do in this situation is say, you may be totally fine, but if you have some challenges in this area, this area, this area, I've got a couple of nuggets of wisdom for you. But without trying to come in as the authority of this is what you should do, because no, people will shut down. I kind of think you have to kind of, and I think it would be a mixture of people that would be ready and people that are aware but not ready.
I'm going to take a different stance for a second, because I think that what we've been doing is going down this route where it's like, I could almost compare it to an AA or to a recovery. And it's like, hey, you got to face it or you're not going to fix it. I think your idea is more valuable than that. I think you're not giving it enough credit. And what I mean by that is, I think you're putting it in a bucket, and it's just one bucket. And I don't think you're allowing that idea to be as powerful as it could be. And here's what I mean by that. You know, face it to fix it could just be a conceptual thing. That it could be a question I have to ask myself. And it could be about something as simple as, you know what, I feel like I had a weird interaction with my neighbor, and, you know, I could just ignore it for years and then wait till something comes up, and that's not full recovery. Like, my life's going to die if I don't.
Fantastic.
You know, it's more like, should I face that to fix it? Like, I would think of it more as an ideal, right? Where I might constantly ask myself, you know what? I've been eating a lot of sugar lately. I'm feeling really like, ugh, I'm kind of feeling crappy. Should I fix it? Should I face it to fix it? Like, and so maybe it's more of a question. And maybe your book can start at level 1 and go to level 10, and then people can
Yeah.
self-identify where, how could everybody can use level 1. The question, what do I, should I face this to fix it? Everybody can use that in a plethora of ways. And then level 10 is full-blown recovery, is like,
Yeah,
fix this thing.
I think that's where I've gotten stopped sometimes, because, if somebody has to go back and something to childhood trauma, for example, that's a lot of work and doing stuff like that.
That's a big thing.
Or a guy like me who's gotten a really bad habit the last couple of years of watching TV until 12 o'clock at night or 12:30. And honestly, I used to get up and work out, and I've got a lot on my plate. And I keep thinking, I've got to face this problem with the TV situation to fix it so I can get my butt up early in the morning to get more done. That's a lot different than the childhood trauma.
Yeah, it's like a level 5 instead of a level 10 or something.
Right. Right. And so I totally agree with you, Cathey. It's just like I've heard something, when somebody says something, oh, I had this falling out with my friend or whatever. And I'm like, well, pick up the phone and call them. Ask them if you offended them so you could clear that up. Oh, and they're talking crap about them for 2 years, It's like, you're never going to know until you have that conversation. That's like a level 4.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I agree with you.
Mark, I don't know if you, go ahead, Mark. I see your.
I just like the beauty of it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the common thread, whether you're talking about a level 1 issue or a level 10 issue, right? This can be applied. That's the beauty of it being universal. And I think that's what really helps the idea, that whether it is the friend or the alcohol or whatever it is. So yeah, I like the direction that you've taken us in, Cathey. So go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to do, let's play a game. I have a game for us.
Let's do it.
Let's all talk about something that we need to face in order to fix. And I'll start. And he's like, let me shut my door. Mark, while he's away from the camera for a second, I just thought, like, there's different levels of what we could do. And I'm just going to start at a really low level, because I would love, and maybe we can go more than one round, because what I would love to see, for what I'd love to give to Brian as an idea, is to show him the different ways of things we can face. Okay, I'm going to start, because this is bugging me. Okay. I have my business account. It's totally separate from my personal account. And by some means, I'm always like, oh, that money in that account feels free to me somehow, which it's not in my account. It would probably kill me if she heard me saying all these things I'm about to say. But I get really lazy about subscriptions that I've had that I haven't been using for a long time, and they're just sitting there. And it's just like, in my mind, I'm like, oh, that's free money. I mean, it's all, any money that it's going to some kind of subscription or whatever is money that an accountant can use, and so it feels kind of, and so I never face it. I'm like, and the other day I saw 3 things in one day, and I was like, I am so pissed right now. There's 3 subscriptions of things I'm not using. I need to face it. So there's one.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to do it, because now I'm extra pissed. So Mark, do you want to go next?
All right. I'm going to try not to go the subscription and email route. And I'm just, you know what? Because Brian, you made me think of this. For me, it's sleep, because you know me, I got all the energy in the world.
Yeah.
Right. I got energy for days. I got reservoirs of energy going on. But here's the problem with that. I know that I could get 2 hours of sleep or 2 minutes of sleep and truly believe that it doesn't matter. I'm on high octane. And as a result, I will stay up late and wake up early. And I know that I should be getting my full 7 or 8 hours of sleep. I know I should be doing that, but I'm not doing it. I mean, I've recently been working on it. So in the last, I would say, 2 weeks, I've been much better at it. And the real test is going to be whether I stick with it. And me even saying whether I stick with it is still admitting that I haven't really fixed it yet. Right? So
But you're in the middle of facing it, which is kind of cool too. So you actually are taking steps to face it. Yeah.
yes.
One of our things too is that is ordering food, and it's so I'm married, we have an 8-year-old Gabriel, and so we're both working. And a lot of times, like, because of Debtors Anonymous and because of my background, I used to have to write down expenses every single day, buy a New York Times, buy a Coke, and you would record all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've been ordering Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, I don't know what else, pizza around the corner, the Mexican place, almost every night. I'm like, we're spending like, $20, $25 a pop every time. Especially New York City and the delivery on top of it. You add that up over 30 days. And so I was telling my wife, we've got to figure something out, and it's not that healthy. Yeah. So that's another, I lowered my voice because she could hear. So.
This is going to be online for everybody to see, right?
Yeah, I know.
I just got to say that.
Fast forward.
But we both know it. It's like, okay, we've got to figure something out with that. But I think there was a period where we weren't even, it was just autopilot, ordering and not, and the whole money, not paying attention to that stuff. So.
All right, I'm going to go a level deeper. Oh, go ahead, Mark. You're going to say something?
I was going to go a level so shallow that I think as we play this game. My children tease me all the time. You get out of the shower, you're getting ready to go to work, and you should lotion up the hands and the elbows, stuff like that. I got the lotion on the hands. I might got the lotion on the on the neck, and my daughter's like, "Pull up that sleeve and let me take a look at those elbows." We got a little dry situation going on there, and they tease me all the time about it. Like, I really should be paying attention to keeping the skin moisturized.
Yeah.
I don't do it.
That's hilarious.
You need to face it to fix it, Mark. Yeah. And sometimes facing it is through other people. They're putting your face in it. So
yeah.
I don't know, Brian, what I love about what we're doing right now is we're conversing on as we're talking, hopefully you can see how this idea can apply to people and how it can be so powerful, because we could take it to a level too where we all go, okay, now in our work situations, what needs to be faced to be fixed? This might be a higher level thing, which is I think ultimately, you talked about this, you could do a face it to fix it for relationships, for corporations and different areas. Like, there's a lot of different ways you can use it, which is so cool. At a company, somebody might have to face somebody working in a position that's not relevant anymore. And nobody wants to talk about that. And so how do we, sometimes by facing it, maybe the fix was something that they didn't know. Like if they let it go on, at some point they're going to have to fire this person because they're not obviously not doing any work. But if they face it right away, maybe they can come up with a solution to figure out where that person could add value. I don't know. I'm just kind of, showing ways that by facing it, and the faster that you face it, the better the outcome will be too. That might be another part of the idea.
Yeah. Because you could also waste a lot of time over years, like the conversation with somebody, that's the classic one. This could be anywhere, church, at work, at Toastmasters, where you felt a slight by somebody and you didn't address it. You create all this nonsense in your head.
Yeah.
And then you, a year later, say, I need to talk to you about this conversation. And they're like, you offended me, whatever. And they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't even know I said that. Please forgive me. Why didn't you say something to me earlier? That kind of thing.
Yeah. Why'd you let it go on that long? I would have told you that that's not the case.
Because it's the unpleasant stuff. We don't want to deal with the crap. We're all guilty of that. But there are those moments, if we do it quicker and face it, then we can fix it so much quicker. We don't waste so much time.
What's interesting about this for me? You're right. There's so many things that we don't want to deal with, especially when we're thinking of them as problems. And yet, this game that you had us play, Cathey, for me, it was so much easier and digestible because it got me thinking about, well, what is something that I would like to fix, right? And I think people have an easier time thinking about things that they'd like to fix, that they can admit
Right.
fix in their life, as opposed to, all right, if I go back to my childhood trauma and think about, my drug issue and alcohol, like that's so hard, right? But on a universal level, we can all, I'm pretty confident we can all figure out something we need to fix.
Mark,
right?
that is psychologically brilliant. No, it's so brilliant. It really is. I think he's onto something there, Brian, because I think even just ask 100 people, tell me things that you aren't facing, or tell me things that you would like to fix. You're going to get a way better response on tell me some things you would like to fix. Some of those things might even be like, I'd like to fix the way that I talk to my kids. I'm not really proud of that. But would they say, would they go, oh, I need to face that? I mean, I think when somebody gets to a point when they say they need to face it, they're at level 10. And you can cut things in the bud if you can have them self-identify it as maybe something that they'd like to fix. And I think you kind of showed that, Mark. I mean, no, Brian, you said it when you were running through the different, kind of categories of like, oh, I'm contemplating it. I'm like, whatever. That I think this time continuum thing is really important for your idea. Because I think early on, Mark, I think that's a brilliant question. That might be the first question. What are some things you would like to fix? What could make your life happier or better if they were to be fixed, even if it's the smallest little thing?
Oh yeah, because that's right. Because if it's something it's again the believability. Like in sales, the output's going to be connected if they believe they can, like if they can sell this product or the price or whatever. Well, our actions sometimes are dictated based upon our own beliefs. So if there is a belief that they can fix whatever this smaller thing is, they're going to be more receptive to the message.
Or it could go beyond that. I mean, I just thought of something too. I had a problem. I've always had a problem breathing through my nose, and I had a surgery one time, and it just dawned on me. I was like, I should go back to the doctor and try to fix that again. That's something that I play sports. It's really hard to breathe through my nose sometimes, and I really should. But if you put me against the wall and said, do you have to face this? I would never say yes to that. I'd be like, I'm not dying. I'm alive.
Yeah.
But would I like to fix it, Mark? Yes. And that's what I think is brilliant about what you said.
And let's take this a step further. I can digest your idea if you allow me to first think about the things that I would like to fix. And there's probably a great chance that what's most comfortable for me is to first start with what I consider to be a small fix, like sleep. But then if I see on a small, comfortable level that this concept is helping me with sleep, now it's helping me with not going out as much. Now it's helping me to get rid of those subscriptions. All right, now I see that this is a concept that works. Now I can with a bigger issue and a bigger. So I think that's the magic in this idea.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think sometimes you go in with the heavy stuff, people will be resistant, even though 100 people around them could see they need some help. But it comes to the individual who has to be receptive to that message. So that's why the smaller things like that.
Well, yeah, it's okay. Think about this. And Mark knows this about me, but I don't think you do, Brian. I was playing pickleball in Miami, and I had an epiphany while I was there. I was like, the only way that you get better at something is if you practice. If you play the game, you can get marginally better, but the only way to get really better at something is to practice when you're not in game time situation, because then you can drill. You could practice a shot 50 times in 2 minutes, where you might only get the opportunity to get that same practice
Oh,
in a
wow.
game
Yeah.
once a week or something. And then I brought it to speaking because I coach speakers, and I was like, nobody ever drills for speaking. So I have this idea, and I'm creating this kind of program right now called Drills for Speakers, right? Things that we can practice before we actually get a speech or before we're doing it. Can we practice being humorous? Can we practice being humorous before somebody puts us on in the spot and we have to be funny, right? And so I think that's what Marc is saying about your idea, is that it's such a good concept that there's so much more to it. And I think I was trying to allude to that at the beginning too, but I wanted us to explore what was more powerful about it. And I think Marc nailed it, of like, you can create this concept that is not back against the wall. It's more empowering. It's more like, whatever I face, I can fix. Whatever I practice, I can do better at. Whatever I, like, whatever challenge I accept, I can overcome. Like, that's kind of the space you put it in, but you have a very clever way of saying it. So,
And it made me just think about the whole practicing is, again, that will influence your belief system that you can get it done by doing small things. When Marc competed in the world championship yesterday, he may have never thought that was possible, but throughout all the repetition and the runs and people saying you can do it. But anyway, this is kind of what I'm just thinking about, being able to face it. If you have some small victories, then you can be willing to do the bigger things too. I don't know if I'm on the right line.
No, I think that's exactly what came to mind for me.
Yeah.
Right? I've got this powerful concept from Brian, and I'm gonna try it on a small scale. And if it keeps working, then now I can try it on a larger scale. And Cathey, I love how you kind of put it, right? Rather than starting from like back against the wall, like this book is only for, the worst of the worst trauma, right?
yeah.
This is
Yeah.
all else has failed. I got nothing else left in life to do, and I need this book. It's gonna, crack open the walls of heaven, right? It's not that, right?
Right.
Because not everybody relates to that.
Yeah.
But everybody relates to, I could fix that. I could fix that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's empowering. It's not backs against the wall. It's empowering. I like that.
Yeah.
It's almost like
more like my elbows would be a lot more moisturized if I put if I extended that lotion up, right? Like and it's there.
Yes.
I was thinking it's kind of like it's like a Trojan horse. You come in kind of like on the simple things, and the person's not aware of what's being presented, how what they're doing could go to a much higher level. But again, that's something they have to discover on their own. But you're kind of pushing it. And
like Marc said, that becomes a practice thing. If I practice on a smaller level with things that are easier, and I understand it as a concept, and I go, oh, if I face something, I can fix it. I practice enough. I can't start out at level 10. I'm going to suck at it. I'm not going to want to do it, but if I start off at the smaller, I can,
Yeah. This is great, because I've been struggling. I'm trying to figure out, because also as a marketer, I know that it has to have universal appeal, and it's got to be, you can't come in with the big guns. Oh, especially with men, they're resistant to this shit. I mean, they're like, oh, hell no.
Yeah.
I don't want to go back and talk about the ex and how my XX is affecting my relationship with my present wife. Hell no. I'm not. Oh, I know what's happening, but I'm not ready to do it now.
Yeah.
But if you want to tell me how I could maybe I could take off a couple of pounds,
Yeah.
Or maybe I have had this idea mulling around in my head since I gave a speech about it, and I now want to write a book about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? So now you got to fix
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I have to fix it because this is like haunting me. It's one of those things you've left undone, and you know it's time for it to get fixed and get done.
Okay. Well, then on that note, we've been talking about this idea. We started off with 500 women on the subway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we got beyond the clown and the ridiculous. And when I say clown, I mean that.
Oh, I know that, Mark.
All the love, man.
Our favorite clown.
Yeah.
But then we got into that whole serious thing, and we've been talking about facing it, face it to fix it. And just curious, as you now, hopefully after this conversation, start working on your next fix, which is this book.
Yeah.
Over the last hour or so that we've been talking, what has changed or evolved or resonated with you, or that you're going to take away with you so that now you can start writing this book?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's a great question. Thank you. I think I just need to simplify the process, same as I did like with the whole subway book. Instead of saying, here's all the things, just say, hey, take a step back. And I'm thinking from a different angle. And say, hey, you've got something that you need some help with. Well, it could be big or it could be small. And it could make a big difference in your life. It can make a small difference in your life. But here's some ways and some suggestions that can maybe help you fix it. But it's not coming after them like, oh, like an omen that's like the black cloud that's over the person's head. Yeah. And so I'd say, and it's kind of like an aw shucks, I can help you type of approach, but maybe make it more general and not as specific. And I'll tell you this is that I've got like the 3 or 4 solutions as for how take small steps, a little understanding why it happens. It's being uncomfortable, but really make it much more simple. You look at Who Moved Its Cheese, like Spencer Johnson. Shit, that book you read like in 15 minutes and he sold 15 million copies. I mean,
same thing.
Maybe I've overcomplicated it. And so that way it could be, here's the formula if it's big or if it's small. That's I think what I need to do.
Beautiful. Brian, I can't wait to read this book. So you better hurry up and finish.
Yeah, I have to. It's the next thing, definitely.
Don't rush it. We want to make sure that it's done so phenomenally well as we know you do it. Brian, on behalf of Cathey, Cathey's my sister, you're my brother. There's a family here. Thank you so much. I just want to give everybody who's watching and listening an opportunity to just learn. Like, if they want to learn more about you, if they want to learn about how to pick up women on the subway, or if they want to learn more about your idea, Face It to Fix It, or learn anything about you, how can people find out about Brian Robinson?
Well, that's the other. I got to get my website up. I've got the domain, Face It to Fix It. I've had the domain for 5 years. That's crazy. So you know what? I'll get the website up and running in the next 4 to 6, and within under 4 weeks. I commit to that. Okay, so look up facetofixit.com. And in the meantime, you're welcome to call me or text me. I'll give you my number, 92. I'm married, by the way, too.
I'm like, no, Brian, don't give your number.
Yeah. Should I give my number or give my email?
Yeah, no, I would just your social or your something.
Yeah, my social. Yeah. Here's my email. It's bcrrobinson@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man.
I'm like, no.
I get in my wife like in the other room, like, what are you crazy? What are you doing? Like, I will do the stupid crap, and she's like, what the hell are you thinking?
Oh, well, that sounds like you've married a very smart woman. So yeah, very, very lucky to have you, and you're very lucky to have her. And we are lucky to have you on this episode. We want to
thank you so much.
So much. It's been absolutely so amazing. And to have this idea with you and just to break bread and to share thoughts and exchange ideas with you. And to anybody who's watching, If you would like to have an idea conversation with Cathey and I, or you know somebody who's got an idea, they want to write a book, they want to do a TED Talk, they want to take this idea and share it with the world, reach out to us at It's About to Go Down Show. You know, we always say it's Marc with a C, it's Cathey with an E. Get it right. We'll get you right as we talk about this idea. We absolutely love having these idea conversations, and we're looking to have many more idea conversations with so many other people out in the world. So we hope that you enjoyed your time, because we know that we enjoyed our time, and we look forward to seeing you again on another episode of It's About to Go Down.